Yeah, good afternoon, Ashok.
Thank you for joining.
Am I clear?
Very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, Bharti. So, how are you?
Doing good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm traveling.
Okay.
I'm in traveling in Jashpur, Balrampur, Sarguja.
Northern
Going.
Chhattisgarh.
Yeah. So,
Okay, no, not to worry, sir, because executive director is about to join us. So
okay.
we will take, I think, 2-3 minutes more.
Mhm.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Ashok, Dr. Hariharan is just having his lunch, and so we will start in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, another 5-10 minutes. What do you suggest? Because he was
Yes,
in a meeting, that meeting got delayed.
yes. We should start soon.
Yes. Anyway, Akshay has gone. என்ன சொன்னாங்க? அவர் remind பண்ணிருக்காரு but ஏன்னா இப்ப நம்ம ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிட்டு அவர் நடுவுல வெல்கம் ஒரு வெல்கம் guests are waiting. So many people are waiting. Let alone guests. I'll tell him. Start with the welcome address. Somebody just start. Dr. Ashok, could you just start with a small introduction as to how this came about, and in the meanwhile, Dr. Hariharan can join? Do you think?
I think we should wait for him. Also, Mr. Zakaria has to leave
Yes,
at some point, so we can't wait too long.
I know.
I think, yeah, we'll just. I think we should make a start because we're already 10 minutes overdue.
Start பண்றோம் சொல்லு. Just allow. ஏன்னா guest எல்லாம் and I think we can start, Dr. Ashok.
Yes, I think so. And when Mr. Hariharan can join us, then perhaps he can say a few words. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to the first webinar of this two-part series. I'm Dr. Ashok Vilodi, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. My co-chair is Dr. Bharati Sahu. Now, just a few housekeeping points before we begin. First of all, I hope you can all hear me and see me clearly. So we have 2 hours. Each speaker will have 30 minutes, and I request the audience to post their questions on the chat. After each speaker, I will summarize the key points. There will then be a question and answer session. And in the interest of time, the first 5 questions will be allowed. There may be time for more, I hope. Okay. Now, this first webinar is about the causation of malnutrition in tribal children. And we will focus on 2 issues, the tribal food basket and the micronutrient deficiency. For centuries, tribal communities have depended on their natural environment for food. The ecosystems involved are extremely fragile, and they have been severely disrupted by various events such as climate change, urbanization, deforestation, etc. And this in turn has disrupted the balance of the tribal food baskets. And in its turn, micronutrient deficiency has been described as the hidden hunger in global malnutrition. In other words, although children may not be hungry, they are still developing micronutrient deficiency. To discuss these issues and their role in malnutrition in tribal children, we welcome two eminent speakers this afternoon. Now, we've had to make a slight change to the program. Our first speaker was originally going to be Professor Ota from Odisha. Unfortunately, he is unable to be with us today. However, I'm delighted to welcome in his place Mr. Job Zakaria, Chief of UNICEF in Chhattisgarh. Our second speaker is Dr. Nimatota Arlappa, Scientist G and Head of the Department of the Division of Public Health and Nutrition at the National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad. So let us begin with our first speaker. Mr. Zakaria is the Chief of UNICEF in Chhattisgarh and has previously held the posts of Chief of UNICEF in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Jharkhand. So he is very widely experienced in the main tribal belts of India. He's also worked at UNICEF in Odisha and Bihar. Prior to joining UNICEF, Mr. Zakaria was director in the Ministry of Education in the Government of India, where he managed various education programs such as the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. In 2002, the United Nations adjudged the community-based education program of Janshala, headed by him, to be the best social sector program in the world. Mr. Zakaria will discuss three issues: the tribal food basket, the patterns of change seen over the past 20 years, and the possible reasons for these changes. Over to you, Mr. Zakaria.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok, and thank you so much for giving this opportunity. And it's very topical to discuss on the impact of malnutrition on the tribal. So thank you for that one. And before we start, as Dr. Ashok indicated, I will be talking about from my experience in actual working in these areas of the core area where the most of the tribals in India live. That is from the central belt, from ranging from Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha. So they about 80% of the tribals come from that area, and fortunately, I worked in most of those states. So before we start with today we are only discussing the two issues of the food basket and also the micronutrient deficiencies causing the malnutrition. So before that one, I have to state that these are only two reasons, but there are another 12 reasons which are majorly which are the causes of the tribal malnutrition. For example, the feeding practices, that means the initiating breastfeeding within 1 hour, exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, and the initiating the complementary feeding from 6 months, the hand washing with soap, safe access to sanitation, safe access to water, health facilities, and then social determinants like child marriage, then the girls' education, the women empowerment, then the social security net. So this, contrary to the general impression, it is not the food basket only or the micronutrient deficiency alone contributing to the malnutrition for the general public as well as for the tribal community. So although we are only discussing, because this is there's so much myth in India that food is the main culprit in malnutrition. It may be not contributing, maybe 10 to 15%. Of course, food is not there. If food is not there, naturally there will be malnutrition. Because even in the rich families in India, the evidence, the NFHS 5 evidence shows there is a malnutrition even in rich families and in rich areas. So that validates this argument that it's only just food basket or malnutrition or the micronutrient deficiency are not the only issues. Now, coming back to the two topics which we are discussing today, how does the food basket of a tribal child or a food plate of a tribal child looks like? I have seen this one. And majorly the food in any house you go, any time point of time, the food, the plate, the diet plate of consists of only one item, that is rice. And it will be, there will be a little amount of watery dal will be there, and certain area they take the rice along with the imli kata, that what the tamarind mixed with salt, and that's what they use. So virtually, what does it mean is, out of the 7 or 8 food groups where every person should be eating out, they are eating, most of the tribal families are eating only one food family, one food group, only rice. And in their food, in their diet, in their food basket, absolutely no oil, no um, no meat, no pulses, no fruits and vegetables, no dairy products. Because in the tribal area, they have cows, but milking cow, they don't milk the cows, because they have a feeling cow's milk is for the cow, the calf, not for a human being. So even if they got a cows, there are a large number of cows are there in the tribal belt in this area, but they don't milk the cow, so they don't eat any of them. They are not vegetarians. They take fish and meat, but that happens only once in a month when there is a festival. Probably a pig come and a pork will be there, or a killed, and then everybody will be eating together. But in a normal, any day you go, on an average, the food basket or a food plate, what you see is a huge, and the quantity of rice will be very large, and which is with only with the dal, watery dal, or imli, the watery imli. So this is the food plate looks like. Now, Dr. Ashok was asking me what has changed over the 19 years, because I have worked not only in this northern belt, I've also worked in Attapadi. So what has changed? In a huge change has happened in the food basket of not only the tribal belt, especially in the tribal belt. One major change is the food plate has become larger. The quantity of food has become, the availability of food. Food means the food grains, rice or wheat, has increased many fold. And there is no, I can say, the whichever, even the remote area go, because we work in a remote area, like in Orcha, the Abujamar forest, the Orcha in Narayanpur, Konda in Sukma, those, even in the remote areas, everybody is getting two meals. And I will come why they are getting. So the food plate has become large, but only problem with that food plate is has only has got rice. And dal, it is a no quantity of dal. Second one is, what change has happened in the food security or the food plate is regarding the PDS system. I remember 15 years, 20 years back, the ration shop, the public distribution system, where they provide the food items, they were not regular. The quantity of ration people in the tribal belt used to get was very limited. There is no certainty whether the fair shops will open or not. That has changed in a big way. Two things, the quantity has increased. Earlier, there was an upper limit for a family of 35 kg per family was the upper limit. And now that has removed. I mean, it is 7 kg per family. So if there are 10 members, they can get even 70 kg of rice is possible. So that food plate has increased. Now, another one important thing as we are discussing micronutrient is most of the micronutrient deficiencies in India are the iron deficiency and also the vitamin B12 deficiency. I think about 80% of when you are saying the anemia, about 80% is caused by iron deficiency or vitamin B12. Now, last 2 years, all the food, the rice which is given through the PDS shop is our fortified rice, which means it has got iron and also vitamin B12. So which means the problem of huge problem of anemia. I mean, which is ranging from 70 to 80% among the women and adolescents and even the children. Probably that may be a story of past, because all the about the in India in the tribal belt, 100% of them, not 90%, 100% of the tribal families are getting PDS ration. Of course, there are certain belts, they may not be because of the integration with the Aadhaar, maybe creating some problem in some area. So they may be getting a list because all the family members are not included in the list. So they may be getting probably less. So this change has happened in the case of the food basket as well as the micronutrient. Now, in other aspects, I'm not going into this one. I mean, other determinants which affect the malnutrition, there also a lot of change has happened. For example, the social protection systems for women. For example, in the state where I'm working now and also in the Chhattisgarh, there is a universal basic income scheme for women, almost like a universal basic income. It is called all the women, all the married women, irrespective of their income, they are given some amount, some cash is given going back to their accounts. Then the income of the people in the tribal belt has increased because most of the state governments are paying a minimum support price for the forest products. The girls' education, the GER, I mean, the gross enrollment ratio of the tribal girls in this belt has increased. Then the other, so immunization rate, which causes one of the major causes for the malnutrition is the diseases. When the children have got diseases, so the immunization rate has, so a lot of change has happened in that sector also. The other determinants, not only in the food plate and the food basket and the micronutrient deficiency area. So a huge change has happened. Now, what what we need to do, what needed is, what is missing is probably there is no tribal nutrition policy or program. All these programs which I mentioned are universal. I mean, the people in Kerala and the people in Sugma, Dandewada district, the tribal people in the remote forest, they get same thing. So there is no specific program or anything. For example, since the food basket, since the food basket of the tribals do not have oil and pulses, uh, why can't there be a special dispensation in the PDS system to provide, say, 5 kg of pulses only for tribals, or say 2 kg of vegetable oil, or I mean ghee or whatever. I mean some supplementation. So there is no special dispensation or a special tribal nutrition approach or a policy is not there. That is a major absence. So that is what. So a few years back, I mean, in UNICEF, and I think in 2014, we had conducted a national workshop on tribal nutrition. So those issues, that's one issue. Second one is the social protection programs. Again, it is uniform. It is, I mean, universal. Whether whatever whichever area you are working, you get some social protection, whether it is the family pension, whether the widow pension or the old age pension or the other scheme which I was mentioning. Irrespective of whether you are a tribal or a non-tribal, everybody gets something. That is okay. Let it be universal. But there is a top-up has to be needed for this on the social protection for at least in the tribal area, for the tribal women or the tribal population. So these are the two suggestions I have. Over. That's over. That's all from my side, Ashok. Ashok, you are, I think, muted.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So are there any questions?
There is one question on the fortified rice supply.
Yes.
This has got some adverse effects as well as many. They some, of course, I mean, any issue has got two views about it. Even on the immunization of children, which can prevent 13 diseases and diseases and infections. There's a big lobby against the immunization of children. So there is a lobby also against the fortification of the rice. But the greater evidence, I mean, is in favor of, I mean, if you are weighing the benefits, you are talking about a population where 80 to 80% of the women are or anemic. So what is the benefit out of it? What are the downside of it? If you weigh, and I think always a fortified rice with iron will be, because it has got the anemia. It is not only this, multiple effects are there, not only because of the reducing the maternal death of mothers, it is an infant mortality. It also especially very important for adolescents, not apart from all other reasons. It increases their attention span, their periods becomes regular. There are many advantages. So considering the quantity of benefits we have got, I think, I mean, probably, I mean, of course, it can be open for more research to know that what are the downsides of the fortification. So right now, the evidence is heavily in favor of fortification of rice. So it's now fortification of rice is a national policy. Every PDS shop is giving the fortified rice, and probably we could create we need to create an evidence about it. I mean, what is the impact of it, whether it's the positive as well as a negative a part of it. Thank you.
So I hope that answers the question. I think it was Anbu Wahini asked about the fortified rice supply to tribals. I'd like, so just summing up, to me, there are 2 or 3 key points that came out of your
Now,
talk.
Ashok, one point regarding this sickle cell issue is, I mean, I do not know. Yeah, that is an issue. We need to have a solution, because this iron-rich food, whether it's a IFA tablet, and this cannot be given to the children, especially people with the sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. So that is one area that's a very relevant area. But what is our alternative strategy for them? Right now in Chhattisgarh and this area which is known for the sickle cell, it's about the prevalence rate of the sickle cell disease. Carriers are more. The sickle cell disease is about 2 to 3%. So what do we have to do for this 2-3%? Because this fortified rice may not be beneficial for them. It can aggravate the situation. And same thing case with the IFA tablet also. That is something which we have to come up with a solution. Thank you.
So there's a question from Viju Parameshwar. Is the limited diet amongst tribals in central India only because of lack of availability and money? And will providing these solve the issues? Or are there traditional beliefs that prevent them eating a proper diet, even if made available?
I think both are there. One is that, their taste buds have been probably attuned to eating this rice with dal and rice with imli, because I remember in one of our UNICEF functions, events in a tribal area, we were serving a full diet. And when I have got a picture of that one, and when it was given to a girl, she was totally perplexed, and she was not able to take the food what we were providing, which was a complete, and they were not able to eat it. So probably it is also a lack of awareness, and also because this is what they have been eating for generation and generation from the childhood. So they don't want any other food. I mean, other than the non-veg. That is one reason. Second one is definitely the economic reasons, because I mean, if you may need about 4 or 5 kgs of pulses for a family of 5 to 7 members, since they are depending upon it, or maybe 1 kg or 2 kg of oil. and even 1 to 2 kg of oil means about 200 rupees. So they're a little economic, but since their economic situations have improved, they may be in a better position to buy them. But that awareness is not there. The importance of their basket, diversifying their basket is not there. So it may not be, although we quote it, I mean, there is an additional expenditure, but that is something they have. I mean, if they have the awareness, probably they may do.
So yes, and you mentioned the issue about drinking milk, for example, and there may be similar beliefs applying or pertaining to other foodstuffs.
Not
So-
for, I mean, other for, at least for, I mean, they don't have any problem with eating meat,
okay,
fish. There is no problem. It is unavailability.
okay.
They don't, I mean, of course, they don't want to kill the, I mean, cattle for meat. They don't do, but they do it for during festivals. They do it, and especially the pigs. So they do it. So they don't have any, I mean, any inhibitions of doing that one. So fish ponds are there. So once in a while they catch. I mean, so they like it. I mean, I have seen they like meat. Although they don't eat, I mean, the milk. I mean, that inhibitions are not there for eggs or fish or meat. Availability is not there, and it also it has got additional expenditure.
So let's move on to the next question from Madhurima Sangma. Food shortage and micronutrient deficiency is not the main reason for malnutrition. The question is, what is the reason as malnutrition?
That is an area I was yesterday also talking. You know, this myth has to be broken. This for sure food availability and the micronutrient deficiency are the not. I would come in personally. I mean, by evidence, by only 10 to 20%. First one, I mean, there are 12. I mean, since I've got some more time, I want to dwell on for just 2-3 minutes. There are 12 areas where we lacking. One is, as I said, in the initial breastfeeding within 1 hour. In tribal area, initial breastfeeding within 1 hour is only happening about only 45 or 50%. Second one is the exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. This is little better in tribal communities compared to the general community, but still it is only 50 to 60%. It has to, both of them have to be made 100%. Third one is the complementary feeding. We know that from 6 months, every house that complementary feeding is happening, but proper complementary feeding is the proper quantity, diversity, that is happening only in 10% of the, even in India, even for non-tribal is only 10%. For, I mean, tribal is only 8%. So unless we have a good complementary feeding practice, now this three feeding, IYC and what we call in nutrition, infant and young child in, nutrition feeding practices, if that is not improving the malnutrition status, there is a three reasons. Now there is another three sets in the wash sector. Any village which is open defecation is there, that village malnutrition have to be there, will be there. Whatever you do, even if it's a perfect food basket, that village will have malnutrition if there is an open defecation. Now, India has declared open defecation free, but the tribal area, when you go, the open defecation is rampant. So we cannot say that, therefore, there is a, they don't have this food is contaminated because there's a often because of this open defecation, and many times they don't have access to safe water. Every village in India has got a hand pump, but many times they use both. There will be a small stream going, so they collect the water from there, that also they use, and hand pump also. And even the hand pump water they store it in a place, and when you dip your hand, because already because of the open defecation, your hand has got 100 crore bacteria and viruses, so it gets contaminated. So this another set in the wash sector, the water and sanitation and hygiene is not there, so that's another set. Then there is a sector, there is a area in the health sector. One of the major reason for, we have seen evidence is seeing the child will be very healthy. One disease, one diarrhea, one pneumonia is sufficient for the child to next day it slip into the malnutrition status. So it's very important that child does not have a diseases, which means if the child have to get a proper immunization. Same thing with the mother's nutrition. The mother's nutrition, the antenatal care for 4 times, food, rest, care. This is a weak area. And tribal area, in many tribal area, we have seen even immediately after the delivery, she prepares the dinner for the house after 4 or 5 hours. So malnutrition, maternal malnutrition, mother's nutrition, it's an issue, and that's another area. Then there is this big block of the social determinants, like for example, child marriage. There is a strong, in fact, very strong connection between child marriage and malnutrition, because the young brides, they are likely to get LBW children, and that means you are from day one you are a malnourished child. So this link, I mean, in India now, even now, 22% of the girls are married before 18 years. And the tribal area, there is also a practice of, I mean, having early marriage. I mean, this concept of marriage is very, it's not just like the non-tribal areas. They live in together relationships. So they sometimes marry very early. So even without a marry, they live together. So the teenage pregnancies are also very high. If the general percentage is 8%, they have about a 10 to 15% pregnancy. So these multiple factors, all these factors put together, then also the element of women empowerment, that is a positive thing regarding the tribal population compared to the general population. Tribal women are more empowered because the Lancet paper says the women empowerment is a factor which influences the malnutrition. And same is the case with the food say security net, the social protection safety net. How strong are the social safety net systems are there? So the system is same as in the non-tribal area, that is also weak. So these are the multiple reasons, and many times there is a tendency to believe food basket and food diversity and food security are the main we speeches after speeches I see that one. So that is a very important area. We need to diversify food, but that's not the only thing. You may contributing only 10-15, even if we have the food basket of 7 or 8 food groups, still there will be malnutrition in tribal area if all these other factors are prevalent in those area.
So thank you. Let's move on to the next question. It's surprising that they don't have much access to non-vegetarian foods. What about access to forest and common property resources?
Now in India, a revolutionary change has happened regarding the access to the common property resources in the forest. Earlier, this was managed by the forest department and some officers. Now I think this has been transferred to a big a movement is happening. Mapping 100 years ago, what were the areas these communities were in charge of the forest, and those forest rights are handed over to the community. So they don't require any forest department's permission to access to the forest products. So those resources, except for cutting the tree, they have all access, and it is regulated by the Gram Panchayat. There is a separate common resource one committee is there, not the one Vikas committee. There is a separate committee. So their access to resources have increased. But with respect to non-vegetarian food, they don't have any access. Since there is no milk, there is no meat, there is no eggs. I mean, there is no hen. I mean, unless they grow themselves the hen and the cow and the milk, and then only they will have access. Or they have ponds. There is a fishery. So those things have to be promoted in that area. And but when I do not know that promoting non-vegetarian food in India may not be a good strategy, because what we should be promoting is more than the non-vegetarian food. What we should be promoting, why are the intake of the protein, So non-vegetarian food is not the only source for protein. So there are other sources. I mean, although it may not be, especially with iron. I mean, the iron the content in the vegetarian food must be very less, and also the absorption rate of the iron from the vegetarian food is it's very less. So that's the situation regarding access.
So yes, I think when it comes to protein, there's obviously we're talking about first-class protein, which is provided by meat, fish, and milk and eggs. But in their absence, one has to, if you're looking at a vegetarian diet, you then have to have complementary diets where pulses complement each other. But that's a topic, I guess, for another.
Politically, Ashok, the problem is politically in India, it will be very difficult to promote any non-vegetarian food. I mean, there are even opposition of giving even eggs to in the Anganwadi centers for children. So it may not be, I mean, ideally, theoretically, it may be a good solution, but then probably ultimately you want the support of the government system to implement this provisioning. So that may not be very easy in India.
Thank you. I think we should move on to our next speaker, but thank you very much. I hope you can stay for the whole meeting.
Yeah. I just want to answer to the last question regarding the they prepare only. These are all the things are changed. I mean, what I want to say, the tribal life have changed in a big way. So there is a kind of they nowadays they cook um, at least two. I mean, they may be preparing once or twice, but they take at least 2 times. Food they take 2 times, and it is not just like the breakfast we take. Normally they go into the field in the morning, and then they come back by 10:30 or 11. Then they take a food, and then another food they take. They may be cooking only once, but anyway 2 times they are taking a full meal, and that full meal is a very heavy meal in the quantity of food they take. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to raise a couple of points which perhaps will come out in the discussion or with the next speaker. And that is that although there are obvious reasons for malnutrition, many of them, nearly all of them you mentioned actually, there are newer areas that have not been fully explored. For example, the gut flora. The composition of the gut flora is very important when it comes to absorption of nutrients. And there is huge variation amongst the tribes in India. And that might be a factor. There may also be genetic reasons for malabsorption of certain nutrients. In other words, even if the correct nutrients are provided, malnutrition may result as a result of some of these additional factors that we haven't yet explored. Okay, thank you. I think we should move on to our second speaker, Dr. Nimathota Arlappa, who is Scientist G and Head of the Department of the Division of Public Health Nutrition at the National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad. He has more than 26 years of research experience in the field of public health nutrition. His areas of interest, research interest, are the public health nutrition, especially with regard to the assessment of the nutritional status of various populations, anthropometry, clinical assessment for signs of malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies, and diet-related non-communicable diseases. He has completed 35 research studies, published over 115 scientific papers in various national and international peer-reviewed journals, and authored 12 book chapters. Dr. Arlappa received the PG Tulpule Oration Award in 2022. He has a citation index of 27,863 and an H index of 38. The title of his talk is The Prevalence of Micronutrient Malnutrition Amongst Tribal Children and Comparison with their Rural and Urban Counterparts. Dr. Alappa, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon to all. Respected Dr. Soumya Swaminathan Madam, DG, former DG ICMR and Chairperson of MSSR Research Foundation. Dr. Ashok, moderator, and Dr. Bharati Madam, co-moderator of this webinar. And Dr. G. Hariharan, Executive Director. Good afternoon to all, and a greeting from NIN. My presentation is based on the tribal NNMB surveys carried out periodically in tribal, rural, and urban areas in India. I have taken the latest studies of each one. Next. As all of us are aware that proper nutrition is the basic human right. And the nutrition well-being of any country's population is the true reflection of the performance of national social and economic sectors and the true allocation of the national resources. Keeping in view, our Constitution of India also emphasizes that Article 47 emphasizes raising of the level of nutrition and standard of living of its population is primary duties of any state. That's why keeping it has also launched National Nutrition Program policy in 1993 to improve the nutritional status of the people, especially disadvantaged groups. National Nutrition Policy has two components: direct interventions, which focus on supplementation programs, the safety net programs, focusing on vulnerable groups. Whereas indirect policies are the nutrition policies, improving the nutrition status of the population indirectly through various policies, particularly to improve the women empowerment, women literacy, and also land sealing act, minimum wages for the workers, like that. Through this, we can improve this nutrition status of the population. The government of India also notified the National Food Security Act 2013 with the objective to provide food and nutrition security in the life cycle approach by ensuring access to adequate quantity of quality food at affordable prices. This act also revised by NIN in 2023, and the Gazette was already published. They have to implement it. As per this act, 75% of the rural and 50% of the urban population receive subsidized food grains under targeted public distribution system. The TPDS is focused on BPL families. Under this, each person has eligible for 5 kg of food grains per person. Among this BPL families only, next person, AAY is there, Antyodaya Anna Yojana. Under this, these are the poorest of the poor families under BPL. They are eligible for, an household is eligible for 35 kilograms of food grains per month. Similarly, India and the government has also taken care of the nutrition requirement of children, women, pregnant women, lactating mothers, 6 months to 14-year children, as well as adults and girls, in ICDS and midday meal programs. Next one. Ending hunger and achieving food security and ending all forms of malnutrition by 2020 is the targets of United Nations SDGs. Keeping in view if you see the scenario in India, the overall prevalence of undernutrition declined very marginally from NFHS 1 to NFHS 5. There are no signs of meeting these target nutrition goals by 2030 or in the near future also, because undernutrition is still persisting, and about 30 to 50% of world undernourished children are still living in India. Similarly, the findings of NNME and NFSC periodic surveys as well as CNN survey also revealed that there was a large regional disparities in the distribution of malnutrition. Next slide. It's a responsibility. Government of India launched several national nutrition programs to address the micronutrient deficiencies as well as other nutritional factors, like National Program for Prophylaxis Against Blindness in Children due to vitamin A deficiency. Due to this program, the prevalence of vitamin A deficiency has declined significantly. Now, very clinical forms of vitamin deficiencies are significantly declined. However, the subclinical vitamin D still persists in India. The second important program to address the micronutrient deficiency is the National Nutrition Anemia Prophylaxis Program. Now it is called the Anemia Mukt Bharat, addressing the children of different age groups, adolescent girls, pregnant women, lactating mother. There are different programs are there where they supplement iron folic acids to control the anemia. A third one which is focusing on micronutrient is the National Iron Deficiency Disorder Control. Like that, there are about 8 nutrition programs are there in Operation India to address the nutrition issues in India among vulnerable food groups. Next. You see, everything is reflected in this one, in the Human Development Index, where it is India rank is very poor, where 134 among 193 UN member countries. Similarly, Global Hunger Index ranking is year by year deteriorating. The current global ranking in India is 111 among 125 countries. For this global hunger index, the 3 important parameter indicators are contributing the high prevalence of high ranking of this one global hunger index, like undernourishment, where the proportion of population consuming insufficient calories, and proportion of underfed children suffering from wasting and stunting. And fourth one is the child mortality. Among these, the first 3 are focused on nutritional parameters only. Coming to the tribal here is the food pattern and their micronutrient status. This table indicates the average indicator of foods in tribal households. It is household intake as a percent of the recommended dietary intakes. That is household level. As a previous speaker spoke about the food plate, almost 80 to 90% of the food plate is filled with the cereals and millets only. You can see other food groups like pulses, GLV, other vegetables, fruits and milk products, fats and oils are insignificant. Their contributions are less compared to this one, cereals and milk. That's why all the foods rich in micronutrients are very low among the tribal households. Next please. This one is the same thing is reflected in the proportion of the nutrient consumption based on the food intake. We can see the average intake of nutrients in tribal household. They are meeting majority of them that they are closer to the recommended intakes of protein and energy. Others are other micronutrients like calcium, vitamin A, iron, riboflavin, and vitamin C are the deficit is very high compared to this protein and energy, because it was a true reflection from the poor intake of the foods rich in micronutrients. Next slide, please. This is the mean intake of milk and milk product. You can see the tribal population, as the previous speakers told, the milk consumption is very low. Compared to RDI of 300 grams or 250 grams, among 1 to 3 years, it is only they are consuming 16.6 grams of milk, whereas in 4 to 6 years, it is 13.7 grams of milk. You can see how there is a huge deficit between actual intake and requirements. Similarly, you can see compared to other urban and rural counterparts, the intake of fats and oils. Against the RDI of 25 grams, RDI of 25 grams and 25 grams, the consumption of oil, fats and oil among 1 to 3 years is only 4.3 grams, whereas it is 5 to 5.9 grams in 4 to 6 years. This will reflect their nutritional status also, because fats and oils are very much essential to absorb the fat soluble vitamins, particularly vitamin A and D, like that. Next slide. Here is this one. You can see here. This table indicates that where 73% of the tribal children are underfed children are not consuming milk at all. Only 22% of rest of the children are consuming less than 100 grams of milk. This proportion of the not consuming milk at all is relatively lower in the rural and urban areas. Next slide, please. This is the average intake of nutrients among the 1 to 3 year children. You can see, except protein, even they are deficit in energy also. Except 14, they are not meeting any of the important micronutrients, but iron, vitamin A, riboflavin, and vitamin C, calcium. The deficit is very huge in this age group with respect to micronutrients in the 1 to 3 years age group. Next one. With respect to 4 to 6 years, similar pattern was reported more or less, where they are meeting macronutrient like protein, but they are not meeting even the energy. The deficit is still very high with respect to the actual requirement. Other micronutrients like calcium, iron, vitamin A, riboflavin, vitamin C are still very low among the 4 to 6 years age because their diets are very poor. At the same time, it is also the previous, we can go to previous slide. In both the 1 to 3 and 4 to 6 years, we can observe that except the thiamine, niacin, the intakes of all nutrients decreased over a period of time from 1990 to 2007, 2000. Except niacin and thiamine, all the nutrients are decreasing in both the age groups. This is a very significant observation. Well, even the next slide, please. This is the 3 years time trends shows that 1985, 87, 1998, 99, 2007. You can see, you can observe both the age group, except the niacin and thiamine, the deficit is increasing. What it means, the intakes are low compared to the previous years. Over a period of time, the deficit is increasing year by year. Almost all the micronutrients, except thiamine and riboflavin, the deficit is increasing. Recently, it is more deficit compared to the previous 2 studies. Next slide, please. This is the median intake. So we assess the median intakes of the nutrients among 1 to 3 children, among 3 regions, urban, rural, and tribal areas. It is that this one is the RDA. RDA, you can see the RDA followed by urban, rural, and tribal. We can compare this one, actual intakes and RDA. And the calcium, the actual intake requirement among the 1 to 3 years as per the 2020 RDA is 500 milligram, whereas the actual consumption only 95 milligrams among tribal children. Even the urban and rural population is not meeting even 50% of the requirement. Still, they are relatively better compared to the tribal children. Because a similar pattern with respect to all the nutrients except the niacin. We can see we need a vitamin E, they need vitamin E 390 micrograms, whereas their intake is very meager, 32 only. With this one, still that's why the children under 5 are still suffering from vitamin A deficiency, particularly subclinical vitamin A deficiency in India. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is the pictographic representation. You can see the deficit in nutrients against the RDA among 1 to 3 children. The deficit is highest with respect to vitamin A, calcium, riboflavin, vitamin C, and total folate. Among all the 3 regions, you can see the green bar, tribal children. The deficit is very high, highest compared to their rural and counterparts. With respect to vitamin A, deficit is 92%, whereas in 86% with respect to total fat, 82% riboflavin. Tribal children are at risk of micronutrient deficiency. Next slide. With respect to 4 to 6 year children, more or less similar pattern is there, where the vitamin intake requirement is 510 micrograms as per the RDA, but the actual intake is 47. You can see even in a tribal or rural and urban area of children also not consuming the vitamin A, not even 1/3. This is we can reflect. It is reflecting that the predominant vegetarian diet and beta carotene present in the vegetarian diet has to be converted. This conversion factor is 6:1. That's why same time it also reflects that animal source foods are very low among tribal population. All the micronutrient deficiencies compared to the urban rural population very high in tribal area, which reflects this one, is animal source foods intake is very low. Next slide, please. This was the pictographic representation. You can say similar pattern. Calcium, vitamin A, riboflavin, folic acid, vitamin C are persistently very low, where the deficit is very high In tribal children, the deficit is even more compared to the rural counterparts. Next slide, please. Next slide. The factors responsible for the highest prevalence of micronutrient among children, we can assume that in general, the population is subsisting on inadequate diets in terms of both quantity and quality. Even quantity also not sufficient in, as per the first slide, even the quantity except for cereals and millets, the quantity also very low, very low. Same time, the quality is extremely poor. At the same time, as the previous speaker was told that the diets are, they are consuming only cereals and millets, monotonous diets. The foods rich in micronutrients are almost negligible. But the dietary diversity is very poor and not improved over period of time. If you see the time trends, the diet diversity is very poor. As per the WHO recommendation, we need appropriate dietary diversity for a minimum 5 food groups have to consume. But this is very poor. 1 or 2 food groups only they are consuming. So it's also observed that poor intake of milk and milk products, which was reflected as 93% of the tribal under 5 children are not consuming milk at all. Similarly, though the leaf vegetables are available in tribal areas, the intake of leafy and non-leaf vegetables are extremely poor. They are not meeting the RDI of their requirement. Similar intakes of animal source foods are almost negligible. Though in general, India also, though 75 to 80% of population are non-vegetarian, but they consume only per capita meat consume 4.5 kgs. It is the lowest in the world. We can assume because that's why we are persistently suffering from the micronutrient malnutrition, that is hidden hunger. Thank you. See, in this regard, before the conclusion, I want to say one more this one. The FSSAI has already fortifying this rice with iron, folic acid, B12. They're also in the process of fortifying it with other micronutrients like vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc, other micronutrients. Other 7 micronutrients are there. The proposal is to fortify the rice with these other micronutrients. Unless we fortify, we cannot depend solely on diets, because the dietary diversity is very poor. We cannot depend for our regular meeting of micronutrients only on diets. That's why still we have to continue the supplementary nutrition program, as well as we have to adopt the fortification of the foods to address the multiple malnutrition that is hidden hunger in India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harappa. That was a very illuminating talk. And I can already see there are a number of questions, but can I just ask you one question before we throw it open? Was this a national profile, or what region are you talking about here? Any particular region, or is this a summary from all across India?
The tribal survey is 10 states in all predominant tribal populations, 10 states. Even rural study also on 10 states. It is covering almost 2/3 of the India. Whereas urban study is from 16 states data.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Did you observe, and this will be, I accept, anecdotal, did you observe any regional variations? Because obviously the food baskets and the diets of tribes in different parts of India may vary.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is there. It is there. If we analyze the state-wise, we can find the large variation in the intakes, even the composition of their food diversity score, as well as vegetarian, non-vegetarian proportion also varies significantly if we analyze the data state-wise.
Okay, let's move on to the questions. The first question is from Viju Parmeshwar. How do you explain the 74% excess protein in the diet of young children when the previous speaker indicates almost no protein in their diets, if I understand the question correctly?
That is true, sir. But the consumption of so even rice, though they eat rice, they are the proportion of the protein available in the rice also significantly, because they are meeting almost all the macronutrients from rice and the wheat only. Other things, occasionally they are consuming non-vegetarian diet also.
Oh, okay. The next question is, amongst B complex, this is from Nitya, amongst B complex vitamins, why is it that niacin alone is sufficient when all others are deficient? The sources are common. What is the actual food intake of the B complex rich foods?
That also, I also observed that from the previous studies also, that this niacin deficiency is persistently low in urban areas compared to tribal areas with the highest, except this one, the persistently very not high, comparatively high compared to other rural and urban counterparts. I also could not find it what is the reason. You have to analyze the data, dietary data for particularly this aspect. I have no clear answer for that one.
I have a question. Do you think that micronutrient deficiency, it's referred to as the hidden hunger, but is it something that's always been there and we've only just become aware of it? Or has it been created by the imbalances that we see in the food basket, deforest, climate change, all these factors?
That's okay. Can you repeat the question again?
So, sorry, has micronutrient deficiency always been present?
Yes,
and is it just now being uncovered, or is this a new phenomenon?
It is not new phenomenon, sir. It is hidden and it is from the beginning it was there. Earlier it was there. To address that only, several national nutrition programs were initiated, particularly vitamin to address the vitamin A deficiency, iron deficiency, and iodine deficiency. Same time, they are also adapting to fortify to address this problem. This problem was the beginning was also there. Now also it is there.
Okay, and again, do you have? So I asked you about the regional variation. There's a question from Lucy. Does this coverage include the tribes of Northeast India?
No, sir, no, not in urban areas, it is there. Urban area, Assam is there. But other states are Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, UP, there. West Bengal. Northeast is Assam is there in urban study.
I have another question. Have you been able to correlate malnutrition or micronutrient deficiency or malnutrition? And this is a question also for Mr. Zakaria, if he's still with us, with other indices of well-being, for example, the HDI or other indices. Is there any correlation?
Yes, sir, we can say there is a correlation because micronutrient deficiency has a correlation with respect to stunting, wasting, all this one. Because the proportion of stunting, wasting is very high, which are contributing the high ranking of global index ranking in India. Definitely, we can correlate it. Because these micronutrients are essential for growth and development of child. So,
can I just come back to my previous question that I had raised after the first speaker? Is micronutrient deficiency seems to be a persistent problem which we haven't solved. Do you think further research is needed to try to get to the bottom of this? Because it seems to me that we're missing something here.
I think causes are already known, sir, but the country, as our previous speaker also mentioned, that the non-nutritional factors are playing most compared to nutritional factors. The nutritional factor contributes to some extent, it is there, but beyond that, non-nutritional factors are playing important, like mother's literacy, their occupation, their cultural factors also playing very important. Particularly in India, we can assume that our Indians are predominantly vegetarian because of it is not their choice. It is by chance only they become vegetarians. That the family is playing very important role in the diets of this one. Similarly, in India, taking papaya during a pregnancy, not recommended and what they're not practicing. Some people also during pregnancy lactation, they avoid taking green leaf vegetables, assuming that they increase the diarrhea. The cultural factors or non-nutrition factors are playing more than 50% of role. That's why actually dietary intakes and nutrition assessment is not going hand in hand always, because this is the non-nutrition factors are also playing significant role.
In your studies, have you had equal, are all the regions that you studied equally represented, or are some regions better covered than others? I mean, do you think?
No, sorry. It is the steering, for NNME, the national steering committee is there, it is equal coverage for all.
Equal.
They're not equal coverage. All the states have the fixed sample size and fixed number of districts and villages.
Okay. There's another question from Bharati. What do you say about the role of gender in addressing micronutrient deficiencies in tribal children?
So, as I mentioned in my national nutrition policy, among this one, the second one, the indirect policies, majority of them addressing to uplift the women literacy, women empowerment, women employment, or health education to women, all this one. Definitely, the major two reasons, and I have seen some meta-analysis, where the persistent problem undernourished India is contributing because of maternal malnutrition and maternal education. These two, if you improve these two, we can assume that we can improve the nutrition state of this one, because there was always positive correlation between mother's literacy status and nutrition status of their children.
Are there any other questions?
There is one more question, that how can we effectively reach, last question from Kumar Arpit.
Sorry, I can't.
Okay. How can we effectively reach small farmers who I think this is related to the first speaker, so we can leave it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Bharati, you're not clear.
That question was for first speaker, so we may leave this because this is a private question to me. That's it. So we can proceed. Am I audible?
No, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes. Tell me now.
I said the question Kumar Arpit has raised was for the first speaker, and the question is a private message to me. So we can skip this.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do you think, just coming back to Dr. Alappa, possible research areas, I referred very briefly to the gut microbiome.
That microbiome, yes,
I think this is potentially a very interesting area to think about.
Explore this, sir.
Yeah, because my reading is that not very much work has been done on this, but enough has been done to suggest that it is important.
Yes, sir. It's going, studies are going on, sir. ICMR studies, a few studies are now on gut microbiota and nutrition status. Absorption studies.
And what do you think about genetic factors? There are now a very small number of papers on looking at epigenetic factors, genes controlling the absorption of nutrients from the gut, using approaches like GWAS and so on. I think that India is very well placed to conduct such studies.
Sir, I am not aware of about this one. You only have to explain, sir.
I mean, there are certain genes in certain areas of gut that control, modulate absorption. And the reason I say this is this may dictate the
Yes.
if the gene distribution varies across different parts of India, this may be important when putting together policies for those
Yes.
regions. It's the same with regard to the gut microbiome. We may think of ways of tackling the gut flora in certain
Yes.
parts of India to improve absorption.
Yes, sir. I have to take up few studies, sir.
Well, if any other questions? Sorry, one last question. One thing that struck me was the variation even in the same tribal community. There was a very good paper, I think last year, on the paniyas, two groups of paniyas. One group had kitchen gardens and the other group did not. And the
Yes.
group that had kitchen gardens did much better.
Yes, sir.
And is this something that you've found in your studies?
Yes, sir. We also did one study in 4 states with the funding from the Swaminathan Foundation Research. We observed this one, sir, the positive finding, particularly in Orissa, in Tamil Nadu, we have some positive impact on micronutrient status. If we be able to motivate the farmers and particularly women, we can improve their micronutrient status of the community family members.
There is another question. Are there any nutritional interventions to address severe acute malnutrition at the community level? I mean, this will be discussed tomorrow as well, but perhaps you can briefly answer that, either you or Mr. Zakaria.
Yes, sir. The Government of India have initiated this CMM program, Community Management Acute Malnutrition. Now, earlier the ICDS or THR is for all the children, irrespective of their nutritional status. But they adopted here, particularly I will give my example from Telangana. THR is a Balamurtam used there earlier. It is irrespective of any nutrition status. Say. But we developed a Balamurtam plus to address the additional nutritional requirement demand of SAM children, severe acute malnutrition children, where we fortified this THR with some micronutrients. Well, the quantity also increased compared to this one. Now it has proven that it has a significant impact on lowering the MAM children, MAM and SAM children. The proportion has come there. That's why the government program is there, sir. Every state adopted a CMM program based on their requirements and the they are also, they have a special THR, state specific THR is there. They have developed with the help of the UNICEF and Kalavati Saran Hospital or NIN like that. There are programs are there, sir.
So before moving on, I'd just like to pause here. I see that Dr. Soumya Swaminathan has kindly joined us, and I would request her to say a few words.
Thank you, Ashok. I was able to connect for a small part of this session because I'm traveling, so I apologize for not being there for the whole session, but I listened to some of the discussion. I think this is a very important topic and a subject that we're trying to address here. And the idea is, of course, to think about interventions based on the research findings and the studies that have already been done and the data that we have in front of us today. So we have, I think, enough evidence of malnutrition being severe among tribal children to think about interventions. And one of the things that we had done, I think that was referred to by Dr. Adlappa, is the Nutrition Gardens program that was taken up in 4 different states, mostly very backward and tribal areas. And the NIN actually did an impact evaluation of that intervention at the end of 3 years and found that the dietary diversity was significantly improved among households in the villages where there was this nutrition garden program. It went hand in hand with nutrition education as well. So I think there's a lot of potential there because from my reading, one of the main issues is the lack of dietary diversity. I think milk and milk products traditionally are not part of tribal diets. So we cannot expect that they should or would consume milk and milk products. However, they do need a source of protein. This used to come from animal protein in the past when they were able to hunt and bring things from the forest, etc., which they no longer have access to. So I think that the access to protein has been severely curtailed because of the change in lifestyle and their dependence on the PDS. So I think the interventions really have to be very context specific. It could be interventions through the Anganwadi scheme, through the school meal scheme, but also, of course, the critical gap between 6 months and 7 months and 3 years, which is where there are no schemes in India currently, except for the take-home rations that are offered by government through the ICDS. It's really up to the family, the mother and the rest of the family, to feed those babies properly. And there's, again, enough evidence from NFHS and other sources that complementary feeding is severely deficient in quantity and quality. So I think that we know where to intervene and what needs to be done. I think models that can be scaled have to be demonstrated. And these models would have to be based on local diets, not on uniform, something that is prescribed for people all over India, but you can have nutritious meals from locally available foods and things that are normally eaten by that particular community, the community or the tribals. So I think it's really time to do something like that at scale and demonstrate that there can be a significant improvement, but in a sustainable manner. And the agricultural interventions here, the nutrition garden, the diversification of crops, and perhaps even the incentivization to grow a variety of crops so that they can have something for household consumption as well, would be one of the interventions. But there would have to be others as well. So I'm sure that there'll be more discussions tomorrow on approaches to manage and prevent and treat malnutrition. But I think today's discussion gives us a very good base on which to form those further discussions, and also paints a very alarming picture of the state of malnutrition. I think it's Ashok, you mentioned genetics, epigenetics, as well as the microbiome, and that could certainly play a role. But I think based on the data that we've just seen, the intake is so low that absorption issues could be certainly adding to the problem. For example, chronic diarrhea or recurrent diarrhea could cause further malabsorption. But I think we have to focus on the intake, and if we still can't improve the nutrition status, then we have to think about other things that may be going on. Somebody in the chat has mentioned about sickle cell anemia as being fairly common among some of the tribal groups. And it's true. And now the government has a very big screening program, which is out in full force. I think all the tribal districts which are known to have sickle cell anemia vulnerability are being screened, and large numbers of carriers as well as patients with sickle cell disease are being identified. So this could account possibly for a small proportion of the anemia cases that we see, but not the majority. But those people do need management, and I think that's something that will have to be scaled up now. So yes, I'll hand it over back to you now, but I want to thank the speakers and the organizers and the participants for having really spotlighted this very important issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Soumya. So I think there are a few more questions, but I think they're probably more relevant to tomorrow's webinar, and which Bharati will be chairing. And So I think we can now draw this session to a close. I'd like to thank both the speakers, the Foundation for organizing and sponsoring this, and the participants, the attendants, and my co-chair, Dr. Bharati Sahu. Thank you very much, and we look forward to a fruitful discussion tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asok, for beautifully moderating this session of series of today. And yes, we hope to see all of our audience and more audience, in fact, tomorrow, so that the questions, how we would address the situation and what would be the interventions across different states of our country, we can go and listen much more to that. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I think we'll end this session. Thank you very much.